most customers float away. They don't leave by flipping over the table and saying, to heck with you, and storming out of our offices, right? They leave by just not answering our emails anymore or not being responsive to the proposal that we sent over.
Can you achieve extraordinary results while making the world a better place? I'm Bruce Temkin, and together we'll explore how. Welcome to Humanity at Scale, Redefining Leadership podcast. Join me as I speak with visionary leaders and top experts to uncover the secrets of humanity-centric leadership. Ready to rethink leadership? Let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome back to Humanity at Scale, where we explore what it really takes to lead with more empathy, intention, and impact, especially in today's fast-moving world. We often talk about loyalty as a business goal, but what if loyalty, whether from customers or employees, isn't something you earn over time, but something you design from day one? Today's guest, Joey Coleman, brings a fascinating perspective to that question. His background is anything but typical. He's been a criminal defense lawyer, a teacher, a stage performer, and now a best-selling author and sought-after speaker. That winding path gives him a unique lens on human behavior and how organizations win or lose people emotionally long before they realize it. Joey is the author of Never Lose a Customer Again and Never Lose an Employee Again, two powerful books that unpack the emotional journey people go through after they say yes. He's helped everyone from small startups to Fortune 500s build stronger relationships, not through perks or gimmicks, but by deeply understanding what makes people feel seen, safe, and valued. Joey, welcome to the podcast.
Bruce, it is an absolute honor to be here. Thanks so much for the kind introduction. And I got to tell you, you had me at empathy, right? I mean, I love every piece of it. It is a real honor for me to be on the show today. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, it's a pleasure. And I think empathy will probably come up a lot during our discussion.
I have a feeling.
Before we get into like the deep of content and leadership stuff, your background is fascinating. It spans classroom discussions, courtroom arguments, client boardrooms, and theater stages. Can you share your personal journey and what led you to work at the intersection of experience design, leadership, and human behavior?
I can, and I so appreciate that. You know, it's interesting. My career and my life path has been eclectic, to say the least. And I think in many ways that is driven by the household that I grew up in, the parents who raised me, and the opportunities and the experiences that I had the chance to partake in at a very young age and then continuing forward. What's interesting is, the speed version is, grew up in a large family in a small town in northwestern Iowa, went to undergrad at the University of Notre Dame where I studied government and international relations, went to law school at George Washington University in D.C. where I studied international law and national security law and litigation. Worked for the United States Secret Service, worked in the White House Office of Counsel to the President, worked for the CIA, did business consulting for Fortune 100 companies, ran an ad agency, worked in a promotional products business, taught at the postgraduate level. I've had all these different careers. And what's interesting is the way you succeeded in any one of those careers was to have a keen understanding of the human condition. Why do humans do the things they do? And what can we do to convince, persuade, encourage them to do the things we'd like them to do? So when I was a criminal defense lawyer, how can I convince this jury to find my guy not guilty? When I was running my ad agency, how can I convince prospects to buy my client's product or service so that our ads work? When I was working as a teacher, how can I convince these students that they want to do the homework and that they're going to get value from doing the homework, right? So again, it comes back to, I think, my understanding of the ethos of your show and your work, which is, what are the connections we're building with other humans, and how can we do those at scale? Many of us struggle to even do those one-on-one, but then how do we build systems and processes and philosophies and frameworks that allow us to have that empathy, to have that connection at a personal and emotional level that transcends just a one-to-one relationship and potentially can become a one-to-several or one-to-many?
Cool. Well, I want to dig into that, but first, I want to push a little bit more on your background because all those things you do, I don't think it was like just you were losing your job all the time trying to find what the next one is, but somehow you ended up going into the world of customers, right, to begin with, and corporate life. What was the trigger, or was there a moment that brought you into that world that made it clear this is the thing I want to do?
Yeah, I think I had started reading business books more as a hobby in late college and through law school. I mean, I was the guy in law school who, when I was supposed to be reading court cases, was reading marketing books by Seth Godin, right? And just fascinated by, well, how can I take what Seth is teaching and apply it in a courtroom setting to make a jury like my client more, those type of things. And what I think was in many ways the impetus that led me to start my own company was I was working for a large law firm. Large law firms are notorious for having you work many, many hours reviewing documents, which is not a particularly fun and exciting job. And I was interviewing for different jobs and different positions, and I had all these ideas about how businesses should be run. And I thought maybe I should put my money where my mouth is and start my own. Maybe I should try to run a business the way I think a business should be run. And 25 years later, here we are, right? That's what I've been doing. And it started as a marketing agency, and it turned into a branding and brand identity agency. And then it evolved into a customer experience agency. And then it evolved into a customer and employee experience agency. And then I started speaking full-time and writing full-time. So you're absolutely right. Every job I've ever had, I left that job because I found another job that I thought I would like more. Not because I couldn't stand the job I had. I'm very fortunate that, all the jobs I've had, I found great value in and had great experiences. They weren't all positive, but I believe every experience is an opportunity to learn.
I love that. And I love the way earlier you described sort of the connection between all those roles of people. Probably about 15, 20 years ago, maybe about 15 years ago, I looked at what I was doing and realized that everything I was doing was just focusing on human beings and how they respond to environments at scale. So it's interesting you did that. And then you ended up writing 2 books about it, which on the surface are about different audiences, customers, employees.
Right.
But they seem to point to the same truth. Loyalty is a design decision. So can you talk about why did you begin your journey with never lose a customer again and go that way?
Well, I knew I was about 5 minutes into my understanding of customer experience before I realized that you need to have great employees to deliver the great customer experience you're trying to deliver. But as you so aptly pointed out, in most organizations, customer experience and employee experiences are 2 totally different things. They're 2 totally different silos, different departments, different leads, different budgets, different organizations. Even though I imagine you and I clearly see the thread underneath connecting those 2 as being the humans, in most businesses, that's not the way they're set up. And so I decided to tackle customers first because that is often the challenge that audiences and leaders would come to me with. We're losing customers. We're struggling to keep the customers we worked so hard to obtain or acquire. And so we built out a whole framework and methodology there. But when I started to look at, well, how are we going to deliver on this framework and methodology? We're going to need the employees. I knew I needed to do a book that was focused on employees. What I didn't realize, Bruce, until I really got into it, is how unbelievably similar the parallels are between customer behavior and employee behavior. In my books, I talk about 8 phases of a customer journey. When I sat down to map the employee journey, I realized they're the same 8 phases. The research shows that 20 to 70% of new customers quit in the first 100 days of doing business with a company. The research also shows that 20 to 70% of new hires quit in the first 100 days of being a new hire. Some people look at this and they're like, well, Joey, customers, employees, they're 2 totally separate things. And I'm like, folks, they're humans. They're the same thing, just a different role. Almost every human on the planet is a customer. Almost every human on the planet at some point will be an employee. So we're having this collective experience, and yet so many organizations, so many books, so many people are seeing them as 2 separate parts, even though the same life is experiencing both of them.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I remember when we first started my company, Temkin Group, and we had 4 competencies for customer experience. One of the 4 competencies around customer experience was employee engagement. So employees was actually in the definition of how we thought about customer experience. So I hear you about that. They're both connected. I want to hit at the data that you provided, which is like everyone loses their customers and employees early, right? There's a lot of that, right? So most organizations obsess over getting people in, customers, employees, but fail to think about what happens after the yes. Why do so many companies fall apart after someone signs on, either as a customer or employee? What happens in those early moments?
Well, I think there are human reasons for that, and I think there are organizational reasons for that. Let's look at both independently. The human reason. As a general premise, humans like the chase more than the catch. Most humans like dating more than being married. They like the uncertainty. They like the surprise. They like the difference. They like the nuance, right? So we have this tendency to be like, well, what's the next thing? What's the next one? As opposed to, let's spend time cultivating this existing one. You know, there was a time where most humans were hunters, and that was, oh, go find something new, go find something different. Where's the thing that's going to keep me alive? Oh, it's over the next hill. And then we evolved to this place where we were more gatherers and growers and farmers. Oh, let's cultivate this space here. And then we evolved back to almost the hunting analogy of go find a job, go work, go do something else, drive revenue. And so I think there's this innate human desire for both. There's an innate human desire for certainty and uncertainty. There's an innate human desire to go get new as well as cultivate the existing. So I think we're constantly in this battle internally at a cellular level about should we be going to find new customers or keeping the ones we already have. So it's happening at a cellular level. We compound that situation, though, with our organizational structures. In most organizations, there is a chief marketing officer. There is a chief sales officer. There are people who are supposed to grow and get more. There usually isn't a chief customer officer. There usually isn't a functional head that's about retention. Now, some people may say, but Joey, no, that's our account services team. Great. Who do they report to? Well, they report to our head of marketing or sales. Oh, brilliant. So they report back to the get more people instead of the keep the ones we have people. Depending on whose research you look at, somewhere between 40 and 70% of C-suite executives come up through marketing and sales, not through keeping the ones we already chased down. And so I think there's some structural things at play in our organizations where we over-index on and over-reward getting new instead of keeping existing. The most fascinating and progressive companies that I've come across are the ones who incentivize their salespeople not only on landing the sale, but they get a piece of the renewal money too. So now the salesperson is incentivized not just to get the one and done, but to get the person who's going to be in long-term relationship. That's how you start to shift culturally and organizationally this mindset about get me more to the mindset of take care of the ones we have.
Cool. So one of the things I've advocated for a long time is that we stop obsessing about the point of sale and focus on the point of value. That in fact, the real win is when you get a customer and they're realizing the positive value that they were expecting. Same thing with an employee, right? It's not getting employees say yes. It's when an employee is actually on board and feeling satisfied and engaged in what they're doing, right? So
absolutely.
So we see this, right? Why is it that organizations can't easily, besides the structural one about I get about the different org structures, but you'd think after this many years, they'd say, we want to retain our customers, we want to retain our employees, let's do something different. So have you seen companies that have tried and failed, or what's getting in the way to jump to do something about it?
I think there's a couple of things getting in the way, Bruce. I think as our expanse or our geography for our businesses has expanded, there is a belief that the need for retention has decreased. So let's roll back the clock 100 years ago. 100 years ago, we've got a small village, and you're the local bread maker. You're making the bread for everybody in the village. You're the local baker. You're probably not selling to people that live more than 10, 15 miles away from the village. Maybe you're putting, if you're really, cutting edge, you're loading up the wagon with some bread and sending it off to the next village. But you're probably, it's a pretty close geography. And most of the people probably know, oh, Bruce is the bread maker. He makes the bread. And if you make a bad batch of bread, they're probably going to let you go on the first one because you're the guy that does the bread. But if you make 3 or 4 bad batches, they're going to be like, we're not letting Bruce make the bread anymore. We're going to go do something different. As we expand geographically in terms of the footprint of our organizations, as we add on the internet, as we add globalization, we now have this belief that there are 7 billion customers globally. We just got to let them know we exist, and surely some of them will give us some money. There's not as much of a consequence about losing a customer in terms of your reputation in the community as there used to be. And so I think that is contributed to this. I also think, if you were to go on Amazon and you were to search, I did this experiment not too long ago. I searched for, under the category of books, the keyword marketing. I wrote down how many books came up, and then I did the keyword sales. I wrote down how many books came up. I added those two numbers together, and I got just over 1.3 million books that had been written on sales and marketing. I then erased those results, and instead I searched customer service, customer experience, customer loyalty, customer retention, account management, relationship management, all the phrases you and I might use, Bruce, to describe what happens after the sale. And even though some of those searches would have came up with the same book more than once, I didn't do any deduping. I just added all the numbers together, and I got barely 30,000 books. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us we have to have 43 books written about how to get a customer before we have 1 book written about how to keep a customer. Is it any wonder that our organizations, that our leaders over-index on get more instead of keep the ones we have when the marketplace is saying it's all about the get more as opposed to it's all about taking care of the ones who have already said, yes, I want to be in relationship with you.
Well, I love that. But my big takeaway from that is I still have a chance to be a bread maker.
There you go. Exactly. Look, there's always an opportunity.
So the fact that I can't make bread is a myth that I could ever be a bread maker. But what are the biggest myths that leaders have about why people leave? Because I'm sure that they are rationalizing to themselves some reasons that it happens. So what are whether customers, employees, what are the myths that you've seen?
Yeah, so let's start with employees first, because this is probably the biggest myth in the research that I came across. If you ask the typical leader, why did that employee quit? The most common, most frequently given answer is more money somewhere else. And that's true 9% of the time. Most research that has been done on why employees quit is based on a sample set of 200 to 500 respondents. I found a study by the Work Institute that looked at 234,000 responses, exit interviews across 17 industries. And what they found is that 9% quit for more money. Bruce, that made me curious. Made me curious as to what the other 91% was. The number one reason given, representing 24%. So basically 2.5 times the number of people that left for money, left for a single reason. And that reason was this. They could not see a career path going forward for them at the organization where they were. They had no idea what their next job in that organization would be. They couldn't see the path, so they had to leave to go somewhere else where they could see the path. Now, if we look at that, we realize that organizations have an opportunity to regularly be talking to their people about what the next promotion is, the next opportunity. And I just don't mean the next rung in the ladder. I mean the next opportunity in the business. When I talk to team members, it's like, okay, what lights you up? What interests you? Is it the thing you're doing now? You want to do more of that at a bigger scale? Great. Oh, it's actually you have a love of photography, and that's really the thing that lights you up. But what you're doing over here on customer service is kind of like to pay the bills. Well, we pay a photographer to come to our events, to take photos of our product, to update the pictures on our website. Why don't we just start paying you to do the thing you love to do instead of paying you to do the thing you tolerate so you can make enough money to in your spare time do the thing you love to do. There's so many opportunities, I think, that we are only limited by the bounds of our own creativity as leaders to say, how can we assemble teams that achieve our goals while maximizing the experience those team members have around doing things that light them up and things that they love to do?
So before we get to customers, because I want to hear your myth on why customers leave, but how do you think about getting a manager to feel empowered and desiring to help that employee see something that may be outside of what that manager's roles and responsibilities and short-term goals are?
I would ask what the C-suite leader has done to make that manager feel that way.
Got it.
See, this is the problem. We want to push it down the line. We want to say, hey, managers, you need to care more about your team. And the manager's going, you don't even know if I'm married or not. And you're telling me you want me to know whether my team members are married or not, or what they're doing on the weekends, or whether they have kids, or a pet, or a favorite vacation spot, or a favorite movie, or a favorite author. We need to lead by example. It blows my mind that almost every organization today has a CRM, a customer relationship management tool. It can be a software, it can be a file card system, it can be a notebook. I kind of don't care what your system is, but almost every business has that. One of the things I ask when I go into work with clients in a consulting capacity is show me your ERM, your employee relationship management software. Well, we've got this HR software that processes payroll. Great. Is there ability to add any notes? Is there an ability for me to know anything about that human being other than how much they're supposed to be paid every week? Or their title? Or their last pay raise? Or the complaints that have been filed against them? Or the performance review that they're under? Where's the stuff about them? If we're not going to collect that about our people, how can we expect them to collect it about each other or to even collect it about our customers and use it in a meaningful way to create personal and emotional connection?
I love the analogy, but I think we both have to agree that a CRM is not going to be the answer to employees the same way that CRM wasn't even an effective tool for building customer experiences effectively over time.
I don't disagree, but what I do know to be true, Bruce, is that ink fades slower than memory. And so often our customers and our employees are sharing things, telling us things, doing things that if we would just take the nanosecond to record that, to write it down so that we could remember it in the future, it will blow that person's mind when we come back to them and say, hey, how was your vacation in Hawaii? Hey, how are your kids? How is Fido doing? You know, I don't hear him in the background on today's call. How's he doing? When you ask people about the things that matter to them, that's what creates connection. And I think in a business setting, we all too often think that the thing that matters to them is their quarterly rock or their objective for the year or whatever it may be, instead of their significant other, their child, their pet, their parents, their hobbies, their favorite team, any number of topics. I don't really care what the topic is. I just want you to care that there are topics and go get curious about finding out what lights up your people.
Awesome. I want to go back to the myth thing because I don't think we had a good myth, or if you have any myths about why leaders think their customers leave so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you ask most leaders, why did that customer quit us? They say a number of answers. There isn't one that they over-index on, but they talk about things like, well, they got a better price elsewhere. See earlier comment that I just made about the money on the employee side. Same research holds true over there. Or they'll say something like, well, we did something wrong. We failed. If you look at the cover of my book, Never Lose a Customer Again, there is a balloon floating away. I don't know about you, Bruce, but I remember being a kid one time at Disney, and my aunt got me a balloon. And I was little. I was probably like 3 or 4. This is an early memory, right? But I remember the balloon slipping out of my hand and the balloon going away and me crying and the adults not understanding why I was so upset. They had forgotten that they got me the balloon and they didn't see that the balloon was flying away. And my little brain was thinking, well, somebody can jump up and get that even though the balloon is long gone, right? Most customers float away. They don't leave by flipping over the table and saying, to heck with you, and storming out of our offices, right? They leave by just not answering our emails anymore, or not being responsive to the proposal that we sent over, or what it may be. And so I think the way we address that myth is we recognize that more customers are going to float away than are going to run away. And what are you doing to catch the balloons before they float away?
I love that. And sort of the analogy, using that analogy and going back earlier, they tend to float away pretty early sometimes.
Absolutely.
So one of the things, I sort of have these statements I use all the time, but one of them is that new customers want to love you, but they're willing to hate you. That sort of they go in, as you talked earlier, with all those positiveness, but they also don't understand how to work with you, haven't figured out how to get the value from you. So I'm wondering if you think about that early phase, right, where you lose most of people. If you had a blank slate, what's the first thing you do to fix how organization handles those first early impressions?
I would give every customer a physical map that shows the relationship journey, where they are on that journey, how far they've come thus far, and how far there is to go. I would give them a visual that says, here's where you are, here's what you did to get to this point, signing the deal and working with us, and here are all the ways we're going to move forward in this journey together, so that at any point in the conversation, you can come back to the map and say, we're now in the terrible forest where things get really confusing because there's a lot going on and you're not sure, are we even making progress anymore? I can't see the path. We're in the darkness. And then we emerge into the light and we go over the river. And when we go over the river, there's a bridge, but we want to all make sure we're on the same bridge going over, because if we try to wade through the water, we're going to get swept away. Whatever analogy you want to use to be able to say, look, you're on a journey with us, you're on a path with us, here's what you have to do. While I appreciate your comment about love and hate, what I think is interesting and how it ties to my balloon analogy is the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. And that's the floating away. That's what's actually happening. The ones that hate you, you can resurrect. I hate the way this is going, and turn it into somebody who loves you. In fact, I'm a big believer that you can turn your mistakes into your marketing. If you solve a problem that you created, they're going to love you even more. What we don't want to do is create a situation where they're not sure how they're getting value. They're not sure where they are in the process. And the challenge I think we have as leaders is we've done this hundreds of times, thousands of times, tens of thousands of times. But to a brand new customer, they have no idea what our process is. They have no idea what our cadence of communication is. They have no idea what our milestones are. And some people listening are like, but Joey, I outlined that in the proposal. They didn't read it. They didn't read it. They signed it without reading it. Or the person who's actually part of the implementation team wasn't part of the contract signing team. You handed off from sales to an account manager. They handled off from the person who bought it to the person who asked to do it. And we've got two newbies who are not involved in any of the sales and marketing conversations going, well, what comes next? What do we do? And we're shocked that people are like, I'm not seeing the value. I'm not understanding where we are. I'm not connected to the journey we're on.
If you're enjoying this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss a conversation. We've got plenty more great stories coming your way. Let's move on now, because I think, and I love your energy, and your energy is showcasing a ton of emotion, right? Which I think is a lead into, and you talked about earlier, you've identified 8 emotional states. You've mapped out these emotional phases that most companies ignore, but they're where true loyalty is won or lost. Can you walk us through the 8 emotional stages and why they matter so much?
Yeah, so they're very similar, but slightly different for customers and employees. Where would you like me to start our conversation?
Let's start with customers.
Let's start with customers. So 8 phases. They all start with the letter A. That's not to confuse you. That's to let you know that if you get all of these right, it's like getting straight A's on your report card from your customer. They're loving you. You're doing great. The first phase is the assess phase. In the assess phase, a prospective customer is trying to decide whether or not to do business with you. They're checking out your marketing materials. They're participating in sales conversations. They're getting a feel for who you are, what you offer, what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, et cetera, et cetera. In common parlance, we call this marketing and sales. They then go to phase 2, the admit phase. In the admit phase, a prospect admits that they have a need or a problem that they believe you can help them with. They sign on the dotted line. They hand over their hard-earned money. They transition from being a prospect to a customer. Almost immediately, they go into phase 3, the affirm phase. Now, I'd be willing to bet that everyone is familiar with the phrase buyer's remorse, that feeling of fear, doubt, and uncertainty we have right after we make a purchase. The problem is many leaders have heard of buyer's remorse. Very few organizations have a system and a process in their business to address the buyer's remorse that we scientifically know every customer is going to feel. In the affirm phase, you have to affirm their choice. You need to let them know they made a good decision and that you're excited about the work together. We then come to phase 4, the activate phase. I call this the activate phase because I want you to energize the relationship. This is your point of value that you talked about earlier, Bruce, right? This is the first real moment of truth where they start to see the benefit of the decision they made. In this moment, we want to let them know that doing business with us is going to be unlike any business experience they've ever had. We got to light them up. We got to let them know we're excited. We got to come to that with the level of energy and enthusiasm commensurate for the relationship we hope to have in the future. And then we come to a place where a lot of organizations fall off the rails, phase 5, the acclimate phase. In the acclimate phase, your customer acclimates to your way of doing business. They learn your cadence of communication. They learn the milestones, the steps of the process, your systems, your operations. You've done this so many times, but they've never done it. You need to hold their hand while they acclimate. Once someone acclimates, they then move on to phase 6, the accomplish phase. In the accomplish phase, the customer accomplishes the goal they had when they originally decided to become a customer way back in the assess phase. If we don't know what our customers' goals are, if we're not tracking their progress towards those goals, if we're not celebrating with them when they achieve those goals, they aren't going to stay around because they're not tracking them. They're not celebrating them. We need to do that. That's our responsibility as the provider. We then come to phase 7, the adopt phase. In the adopt phase, the customer becomes loyal to you and only you. They're committed. They are bought in. They are loyal. And if, and only if we get through all 7 of those phases, do we have the right, the privilege, the honor to invite them into the 8th phase, the advocate phase, where they become a raving fan singing our praises far and wide. The main problem, Bruce, is most organizations want to jump from phase 1 assess to phase 8 advocate with no time spent on the intervening emotions and feelings and parts of the journey that happen between those 2 phases.
Any sense of the length of time it takes to get from the first A to the 8th A?
Depends on the business, right? Let's pretend I'm in a store and I'm like, geez, my breath's a little bad. I might like to buy some bubble gum. So as I'm checking out, I see an impulse buy right at the point of sale. I buy some bubble gum. As I'm walking out of the store, I open it up. I put it in my mouth. I start chewing. My breath gets fresher. That entire period was the assess phase, the admit phase, buying the gum, the affirm phase. Should I have bought that gum? I open it up, start chewing it. The activate phase, oh yeah, it's pretty good. It's making my breath smell fresher. The acclimate phase, chew it. How long is the flavor going to stay? We'll see. And whether I become accomplished or not, well, my first phase of accomplishment is, oh, is my breath better? Yes, it is. Great. Mission accomplished. Do I become an adopter? Well, did I like the flavor? Did it last long enough? Does it solve my problem for the rest of the day, or do I need to put another stick of gum in, right? That might be a very fast that happens in a matter of hours. Now, let's pretend you sell the lights that go on runways at airports, okay? I have a friend who that's their business. They do airport runway lighting.
That's good because that's very specific example.
Very specific, okay? That sales process is 2 to 3 years. The sales process, the assess phase, 2 to 3 years. From the time they sign the contract till the time they break ground, till they get everything done where they're ready to start laying the electrical cable for the lights, probably another 6 to 10 months. From the time they get the lights laid and then they get the concrete down, they get everything done and planes start landing on the runway, probably another year or 2 anyway. So depending on your business and your industry, these phases could happen very quickly or they could be spread out of days, weeks, months. This is why I recommend that every leader sit down with these phases and say, let's map our customer journey to this path. And if you sell products and services, you're going to have different paths. I sell books. Someone buys a book. Great. Sale made. Well, did they read it? When do they open it? Did it go to the top of their to-read list? Did they read it immediately, or does it go on their shelf and it might not be read for years? Depends on the customer, depends on the situation. If somebody sees me speak in front of an audience, they come in, they pay for a ticket, they come in, they see me speak. All of that happens in a matter of hours. Completely different customer journey.
Now, how different are the 8 emotional stages for employees?
They are very similar with the exception of one of the words changes. They still all start with A. I'll go through them really fast. The assess phase is when a prospective candidate is trying to decide whether or not they want to come work with you. Checking out your LinkedIn profile, your About Us page on your website, going through your application process, submitting their resume, etc. They then come to the accept phase. Earlier, I called this the admit phase on the customer side. On the employee side, it's called the accept phase. Why? Because the employer accepts that this is the candidate we want to make an offer to. They extend an offer, and if we're lucky, that candidate accepts the offer. They transition from being candidate to being an employee. Then they go into the affirm phase. On the customer side, it's called buyer's remorse. On the employee side, it's called new hires remorse. The exact same thing. They begin to doubt the decision they just made. We then come to the activate phase, the first official day on the job. You know at the end of that day on the job, their loved ones, when they see them that night, are going to say, how was it? Let's follow the immortal words of Bonnie Raitt and give them something to talk about, right? Let's give them something to talk about. So they say, oh my gosh, my first day was amazing. They met me. They were excited. They had a big high five tunnel. There was a cake. We had a celebration. They took me to lunch, versus the typical first day hire experience, which is I went into a boardroom with somebody from HR and filled out paperwork for 3 hours. I'm not saying you can't do the paperwork. I'm just saying maybe we shouldn't do that in the first 3 hours of our time together. We then come to the acclimate phase. They get used to your way of doing business. The accomplish phase. The employee achieves the goal they had when they originally decided to become an employee. The adopt phase. They become a loyal, committed employee who's not going to take the call from a headhunter. And last but not least, the advocate phase, where they become a raving fan, writing reviews on Glassdoor. You've got an open position. They're getting the smartest people they've ever worked with to come apply to also join them at this company because they love it so much that they're willing to be an advocate for the business. Humans are humans are humans, whether we're talking about a customer journey or an employee journey.
So we have these 8 stages. Besides mapping them out, what other tools do you recommend that leaders use after just knowing and understanding those stages?
I believe there are 6 tools we can use to communicate with our employees. We've got and our customers alike. We've got in-person interactions, which most of us end up taking for granted. We don't maximize the mano-a-mano in-person opportunities to create personal and emotional connection. We've got email. And this is the tool most people use to communicate with their customers and their employees, and it's not a particularly effective tool, right? It's a 5-letter word that really should be a 4-letter word, if you know what I'm saying, right? Most people are not excited to get more email, so you want to think more consciously about email. And some people are like, well, Joey, we use Slack or we use Teams. It's a different name for email, has even more letters, but it's still the same problem. The third way we can interact with our customers or our employees is via phone. I'm talking about text messages. I'm talking about phone calls. I get that you may not like to use the phone, but the research shows that 60% plus of customers would rather talk to someone on the phone when they're trying to resolve an issue with the business than do any other form of communication, right? Your employees are also the same way. They would love to hear from you, a text, a conversation, and not a where are you or you need to come in and take someone's shift, but a thoughtful, meaningful communication via the phone. We then have videos. Okay, most of us use videos for marketing. We don't use videos to create personal connection. What are the individualized, personalized videos you are creating for individual customers or individual employees to give them a visual and emotional representation of the energy you have for the relationship? And last but not least, gifts and presents, right? And pro tip here, if it has your logo on it, probably not a gift or a present. It's a marketing tool. A gift or a present is something that when the person opens it, they go, oh, they know me. They were paying attention when I was talking. They know what I like, what I'm into, what I'm interested in. You can use any of these tools. You can combine these tools. You can text a video. What I think organizations and leaders should be doing is thinking strategically and intentionally about their channel mix of these tools. How are you using these different tools at different times to build different types of connection with your team? A personalized video at the end of your first day might be great, might not, might feel like a little too much. But you know when it would feel great? On your 3-year anniversary. When you're like, oh, they still know I'm here. They still care.
Any thoughts on how AI and the growing capabilities of AI will either hurt or help that connection building throughout the phases of emotion?
Well, like most technology tools, it can be used for good or it can be used for evil. There are aspects where I think it's going to dramatically increase the amount of connection. There are aspects where I think it's going to dramatically harm the amount of connection. Where I think AI can help is it can help us to find points of commonality faster. I can maybe say, hey, give me 5 things from Bruce's past and his career history that align with my past and my career history, so we have something to talk about, and I can maybe find a path of commonality or a path of polarity faster. Where I don't think it works is when it's like, oh, ChatGPT, write a meaningful emotional message to Bruce on his 5-year anniversary of being at our company about why we're so glad he's here. Folks, if you are hardwired due to any number of reasons to need that to start, I'm not judging you. But if you are using that as the way to create personal and emotional connection with your team, you're missing out. It is neither personal nor emotional.
Cool. So what's one thing that you think a leader or senior leader should do to either kick off the focus on making more connection across their organization with either customer or employees? What's the 1 or 2 things you think they should start with?
Yeah, here's something they could do in the next 15 minutes after they're done listening to us that would cost them less than $2. All they have to do is take out a piece of paper and decide, am I going to write this to my favorite customer or my favorite employee? I don't care which one, pick. Let's say it's your favorite employee. And the message goes something like this. Dear Sally, I wanted to take the time to put down into writing how much you mean to me and this organization. You are such a valuable member of our team. You know what I love most about you is when we show up at a team meeting, you always seem to have a spring in your step. You're always willing to throw out a new idea. You're willing to challenge me when my ideas aren't that great and say, really, Joey, that's what you want to do? And I love that about you. I don't say it enough, but this business would not be able to be what it is without you here. Thank you so much for giving of your time, your talent, your capability to be part of our team. We love and value it and so appreciate it. Signed, Joey. Now, that's going to take you less than 10 minutes to write. You fold it up, you put it in the envelope, and you mail it. Physically mail it in the post. Here's what we know about the recipient, Sally. She has probably never received in her life a personal thank you note from the leader of the organization she's been working for. She is going to read that and she is going to keep that. Why? Because it's physical proof that she matters. It's proof that she is having an impact. And in this day and age, human beings are dying for physical proof that they matter. The research also shows she's going to show it to her loved ones and her closest confidants. Who, by the way, when she's having a bad day 3 months from now and is like, Joey's an idiot. I can't believe I work for that guy. They're going to go, the same guy that wrote you that really thoughtful note? You've now created advocates and ambassadors within her circle of friends or family members because of your willingness to go first and express your gratitude for the role that this employee is playing in your organization. You can do the same thing for customers. It takes you less than 5 minutes, costs you less than $2. And yet I will tell you, Bruce, and I say this with honesty and also my heart breaking a little, the majority of people listening to our conversation are not going to do it. And that's why this technique is so effective, because so few do. If everybody did it, it wouldn't be as effective. I'd posit it'd still be super effective, but it wouldn't be as effective. If you're one of the few who picks up this gauntlet of a challenge and does it, and let's say after you write one, you decide next week you're going to write one, and the next week you're going to write another one, and you just do one a week and it takes you 5 minutes a week, you get to the end of the year and I promise you, you will have a completely different relationship with your customers, with your employees, with everyone who you sent a letter to.
Nice. That's one of those things that what's the saying that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is right now, right? You might
Absolutely.
say, I haven't been doing this. Start in 5 minutes after you listen to
It's
the
totally
podcast.
fine. Have you ever received a thank you note for the contributions you've made and gone, they could have sent this earlier? No. When we received the note, we're like, oh my gosh, they cared. They noticed. They were paying attention. We as humans, and especially as leaders, get so critical of ourselves I never did a video before. I should have started ages ago. And we don't start today. I never sent a thank you note to a customer. I've been in business for 10 years. What an idiot. No. The idiot is only the person who 10 years from now, if we have the same conversation, still hasn't sent one. That's the problem. That's the challenge. That's the opportunity.
Awesome. So I want to shift a little bit of our thinking now to the future. Looking ahead, what gives you hope about the future of leadership and how we treat people, especially in a world driven by speed, scale, and technology?
This is a great question and a hard question. I believe there are two human philosophies, right? There's the philosophy that humans at their core are good, and there's the philosophy that humans at their core are not good. I believe that humans at our core are good. I believe we make bad decisions, and we've got plenty of examples of that in the past, in the present, and in the future. But I think there's something beautifully unique about the human condition, that while the pendulum has a tendency to swing really far to one side or the other, it usually comes back to a more corrective measure. And so the hope I have for the future is that in a world where you can do almost any job and be employed in almost any industry from the comfort of an internet connection, that organizations are going to realize there's more to it than the productivity. There's more to it than the backside in the seats. There's more to it than what's our head count, right? And instead we lean into what's our heart count. How many people are bought into this? How many people are feeling the pulse of what we're doing? How many people are devoting of their time, their effort, their energy to be part of something bigger than themselves? I think it's something that every human being desires. And the organizations that are going to succeed in the future are the ones that double down on that instead of the ones that double down on speed and scale and efficiency.
Love that. Heart count, not head count. So I think let's shift. That's a perfect way to now transition into the questions that I ask at the end of all my podcasts. Standard set of questions. First one is, if you could pick one leadership skill that will be even more important in the future, what would it be?
Hands down, empathy. It's the one thing that all the AI experts agree on, where we don't think we're going to be able to teach AI total human empathy. Doesn't surprise me, because most humans don't have total human empathy. So it's going to be hard to teach a computer to do something that we're not doing as humans. I think that is what separates us from the machines. The ability to stand in the shoes of another person and not only see the world the way they see it, but feel the world the way they feel it, experience the world the way they experience it. That's when we are able to move from being critical to being curious.
Great. Second question, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing that would make organizations more human-centric, what would it be?
Invest as much in your people as you do in your process. Most companies think nothing of rolling out a software implementation that'll cost them $500,000. But if I say, let's take the entire company on a 4-day cruise with their loved ones, and it's going to cost us $500,000, they're like, what's the ROI on that? I'm sorry, we didn't have an ROI conversation on the technology. Why are we having it on the humans?
For leaders inspired by your work, what's one final piece of advice you'd like to leave with them?
I have had the distinct pleasure of meeting leaders on all 7 continents. Leaders that led teams, leaders that led villages, leaders that led companies, leaders that led families. And if there's one common thread that I see amongst most leaders, is that the biggest level of criticism in their life is directed towards themselves. Their self-criticism. I'm not enough. I could have done more. I need to do better. I need to learn more. I need to grow more. If there was one thing that I wish every leader would do, it would be a little gentler with yourself. Celebrate what you have accomplished. Honor what you have done. Spend more time thinking about supporting yourself than criticizing yourself. That's what I wish more leaders would do.
Great. And where can our listeners follow your work and get more involved in the ideas you champion?
My books are called Never Lose a Customer Again and Never Lose an Employee Again. They're available wherever you like to get books, indie bookstore, Amazon, everything in between, wherever you like to get books. If you like reading physical books, we've got a hardcover. You can take notes in the margins. If you like ebooks, we've got ebook versions. If you like the sound of my voice during our conversation, I've got an audiobook for each that I narrated so you can have me read the book to you. Those are the books. And the best place to find me is on my website, joeycoleman.com. That's Joey, like a 5-year-old or a baby kangaroo. Coleman, Coleman, joeycoleman.com. You'll find all kinds of information there about customer experience, employee experience, workshops, keynotes, consulting engagements. My job, my mission, my vision is to contribute to better experiences for humans, whether that's customer humans, employee humans, or just human humans. And would love anybody who's interested in doing more of that or being part of that journey to reach out.
And how perfect to end our podcast, Humanity at Scale, with that statement. Thanks so much, Joey.
Thanks so much, Bruce. I appreciate you having me on the show. And thanks to everybody for listening in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I enjoyed chatting with Bruce.
Thanks. Well, I hope you found my conversation with Joey as insightful as I did. His perspective on customers and employees and his practical strategies for understanding the 8 emotional stages is essential for leaders navigating today's complex and rapidly changing world. If you enjoyed this discussion, I encourage you to share it with others who might benefit from these ideas. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast for more inspiring conversations. Now let's reflect on what Joey and I just discussed with some key takeaways and actionable insights that you can apply in your own leadership journey in the after show. Welcome to the after show, where I'm excited to share some thoughts about my discussion with Joey Coleman. Joey doesn't just talk about loyalty, he dissects it. And not in the abstract. He shows us how real loyalty, whether from customers or employees, is built emotionally right after someone says yes. That's where most organizations stumble, and it's where the best ones separate themselves. Here are 5 takeaways that really stuck with me. First, most people leave quietly and early. Joey shared data showing that many people leave within the first 100 days, not because of major failures, but because the experience feels flat, disconnected, or emotionally uncertain. And as he put it, most people float away. They don't storm out. That early silence is dangerous, and it's often a sign that no one really designed what happens after someone joins. Second, loyalty is lost in the space between assess and advocate. Joey outlined 8 emotional steps people go through after they commit. Most organizations want to jump from the first, when someone's still evaluating, to the last, when they're raving fans. But it's the messy middle, affirming the decision, activating the relationship, helping people acclimate, that builds true connection. Loyalty isn't a straight line. It's a journey, and most leaders aren't guiding it. Third, we've built organizations to chase, not to keep. The stats say it all. Over 1.3 million books on sales and marketing, but fewer than 30,000 on customer retention, loyalty, or experience. That imbalance shows up everywhere, in our org charts, our incentives, our dashboards. As Joey said, we reward the hunter, not the nurturer. Until we change what we value, we'll keep celebrating acquisitions while loyalty quietly slips away. The fourth idea is the biggest reason people leave isn't money. It's the lack of future. Only 9% of employees leave for more money. The rest, they just don't see a clear path forward. They can't imagine a future where they will grow, contribute, and matter. And that clarity gap is often systemic. If a manager doesn't feel seen, Joey said, why would they help their team feel seen? This isn't just a retention issue. It's a reflection of how deeply or shallowly we invest in people's potential. The fifth idea is that small moments of care build long-term commitment. Joey's challenge was simple. Write a handwritten thank you note. 10 minutes, $2, that's it. But most leaders won't do it, and that's exactly why it works. It stands out. It shows intention. Ink fades slower than memory, he said. In a world of Slack pings and templated emails, a personal note becomes a signal. You're not just seen, you're valued. And then came the line that still sticks with me. Stop focusing on headcount, start focusing on heart count. That's the shift. From roles to relationships, from metrics to meaning, from running the machine to stewarding the journey, from tracking bodies to honoring humans. So here's what I'll leave you with. Are you creating journeys that people actually want to stay in? And is your leadership creating a positive legacy or just some discrete results? That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Thanks for tuning in to Humanity at Scale, Redefining Leadership podcast. Remember, true leadership isn't only about achieving short-term results. It's about creating a lasting positive impact on all of the people you touch. Join me next time as we uncover more insights and strategies for humanity-centric leadership. Until then, I'm Bruce Temkin, encouraging you to lead with purpose and empathy and to be the spark that elevates humanity at scale.